What I'm going to do is I'm going to read fragments from different books, from my three books, Interleaves, which is a memoir, Sacred Secular, which is a set of essays, and The Integral Nature of Things. I would like you to just allow my words to find you where you are and not strain too much. I know we also have competition from noise elsewhere, but I hope this is going to work anyway. Okay. I'm starting with a poem from Interleaves called Autobiography. Just put your hand up if you can't hear me, okay? Or if I'm going too fast. Autobiography. The ocean of love, the lotus of compassion, woman born of the fire of consciousness, daughter of the divine feminine, dancing in the joy, pain, delusion of incarnation, searching, searching, searching outside for the universe that is verily within. The more she sought, the more she held all the pain, joy, delusion in her flesh. Twisted, tortured, bloated, doubled in pain, she nonetheless crawled across the globe, across the color line, across the sexual continental divide, seeking love in women's faces and eyes. Diving deep into Marxism, then feminism, then postmodernism, then post-what? All the whiles the toxins of fears unspoken, love unfelt, grief bottled, joy thwarted, swirled in the underwater world of her body. Whirlpools of pain zinging and boinging against the vertebrae and bubbling in the intestinal tract. The noises of stories half accepted, fully believed, badly digested, grew to a din. There seemed no way out. Then the big bang of a Pepsi truck skewered her out of the chaos. A deep stillness descended as the long, dark night of the soul was born. At first, pitch dark, darker than Kali's body, brighter than her eyes. Later, a few stars, and then the sun moon herself. A child in a tiny boat, floating, floating, floating. All landmarks dissolved by the ever-receding horizon. No past to hold on to, no future in view, present, continuous. Deep breathing, tender teaching, meditation. Wooed by bliss, then by a never-ending, ever-deepening devotion, the figure on the bed, tossed between being bent over in pain and lying open-handed, wide-hearted in prostration to the divine. Grief, pain, increasingly dancing Kali's famed dance in her cells. Shall I carry on?
Can I have one of my volunteers with me right now, please?
If the volume there can be just turned down
That's
a bit.
what I'm trying to do.
Grief, pain, increasingly dancing Kali's fame. Grief, pain, increasingly dancing Kali's famed dance in her cells. Sorry about this. And where, oh where was the past in this presence continuous? At the core of each breath, the center of every dream, the nightmare in the mirror, the demons under the bed. She was in pre-op for cosmic surgery. Nowhere to run, no way to hide, only a deeper and deeper, starker and starker nakedness. Everything stripped away slowly, gently, inexorably, and in the solitude of the increasing visitations of self, she begins to speak, to weep, to howl, to scream, to release and repent. And then the crutch whip of repentance is gently removed as she is taught the hardest lessons of all: compassion, forgiveness, tenderness. All the while, the Paramatman light is falling noiselessly like virgin snow. And as she slowly, oh so slowly, begins to love herself, the lotus blooms from her heart and angels begin to sing. I'm sorry, I don't know. It's really, this is very hard because I'm trying to read poetry.
I know. I've sent a volunteer there.
Okay.
And I think even Mani went and spoke to them. They can't? They would.
Okay. So this is really hard on you, and I don't even know if any of it's making sense, but shall I carry on?
Is it possible to increase our mic volume a little bit?
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. This is a short piece for extract from Walking Meditation in Sacred Secular. I feel I'm yelling. This is not ideal. Okay. Space, place, physical, psychic, emotional geography, air, energy, dancing molecules. Pray, what is the function of history? Marshland, gradually dredged, becomes a usable plot in the growing expanse of a southern city. Water drained becomes a moat around the perimeter of each individual home. Breeding ground for bacteria or simply stagnant water, moss green. As I walk through this new development taking shape as the 20th century draws to a close, I am aware that I have no idea how many centuries this land has been home to birds, insects, and wild flowers before it became cherished property, prime real estate. Marshland becomes dry land. Dusty footpaths are tarred to make paved roads. How many stories of lives lived, work done, lie pressed into the newly surfaced tarmac? Impermanence is manifest all around us. There is no transformation without concomitant destruction. The question is, who bears the brunt? How will those who have sacrificed and those who have gained each live out the consequences of their actions? I walk past a building site. Men and women are carrying huge loads, building brick by brick, the walls of a house in which they will never live. The Marxist in me wishes to know how much they are paid and what whether they are unionized and what safeguards there might be for their protection. The feminist in me wants to know all this and also whether women's wages are equal to those of men, whether pregnant women receive any kind of support and maternity leave, and why there is no creche, only little babies wrapped in saris tied to nearby trees. The meditator in me wants to know all this and more. Who are these beings? Who are they really? What is it that they have come to teach? What is it that they have come to learn? And what will they have the courage to complete in this lifetime? I can no longer see them only as laborers who deserve a decent wage and appropriate conditions of work. I see them also as spiritual beings who are here on a mission and pray that they will have the support to fulfill their destinies. The next short prose poem is from The Integral Nature of Things, and it was written in context of road widening in Bangalore, which, as we know, is a curse we all have to live with. And it's called A Street is Not a Road. A street is not a road. True, they are synonyms. But street evokes much more. Roads connect points in space. They are moving corridors, metalled, unmetalled, raised, sunken, potholed, mud-packed, gravel-laden thoroughfares. Streets are life worlds, people in action, cultures in play. The street is a theatre of contiguity, chance, conflict, and conviviality, a delicate, imprecise equilibrium. The broader semantic range of street is evident in our language. Street smart, the Arab street, and the man on the street express how the street is a site of socio-cultural negotiation and political expression, while Dalal Street, Main Street, and Wall Street are examples of named locations that symbolize ideas even more than specific geographical coordinates. By contrast, One for the Road, Hit the Road, road movie retain the relation of road to journeying, to the process of moving through. So it is that while boulevard, way, route, path, avenue, lane, or drive may suffice as alternatives to either word, there are others that apply to street alone. And these have to do with its meaning as cohabited space. Residents, locals, occupants, dwellers, neighborhood. The tension between street and road is manifest in how widening a road can actually narrow a street in this broader sense. Street life is in inverse proportion to road width. Its vitality depends on either side of a road being within earshot of one another, on people, sound, and activity traversing back and forth with ease. Two halves of a whole in fluid embrace. This requires that a road be imagined in relation to the community it embeds, one axis among others in a living quadrant, not merely as a conduit to and from privileged destinations. When roads are not conceived as streets, they trespass. They encroach upon and infringe the variegated rhythms of life, its diagonals, zigzags, and recursive loops, its alternatingly casual, purposeful, meandering character, its improvisational nature. The road becomes a border, slicing through neighborhoods, hemming in segments, reconfiguring localities, reminding us of the relation of road to raid, hostile incursion against person or district foray. This meaning of road, common in the 16th century, is obsolete in the 20th, but its sense lingers in our use of the word inroad and in our experience of the consequences of city planning that focuses not on streets, but on roads. Okay. I have two more short pieces, but shall I do them both? Okay. Yeah, they're very short. This is called anger meditation, and it's not a response to this.
No, I think it is much required.
It's not a response to this, but I'll say, read it anyway. Anger meditation. I'm sorry, I'm having to shout. Anger burning, anger rising, reddening, thickening, anger crying, anger sighing, anger throbbing, shaking, quaking, anger wincing, anger cringing, anger straining, stretching, breaking, anger roiling, anger boiling, anger moaning, lowing, growing, anger peaking, anger cresting, anger dancing, whirling, laughing, anger skipping, anger skating, anger thinning, strolling, humming. Free, free, freed from body, mind, and heart, anger gradually dissolves, resolves, evolves into the peace of truth, purely expressed, simply witnessed. And I'm just going to end with a very, very short kind of conclusion, tying the pieces together, just a paragraph. Witnessing remakes the relationship of observing self, subject of perception, and process of knowing into a fluid triad, one that is continually evolving. The idea of knowledge as capture gives way to knowing as a form of communing. We are led to be curious about the isness of things, to wonder how we might learn to notice it, learn from it. A space is created whereby surprise, mystery, and accident can assume their place in our understanding of things alongside predictability, certainty, and structure. Can one approach social inquiry as one might a music performance or a walk in nature? Theorize with the kind of focused spaciousness that a photographer might bring to her work. Allow politics to make us contemplative as we might permit a star filled sky. How would the politics of difference be transformed when difference is reconceived as the play of specificity within interdependent diversity? Such questions could be dismissed as fanciful. But will this response any longer suffice? Thank you for your patience.
First, I have to thank you for keeping on going. It was really hard because from where we are, you can hear it, it's much louder. You have the speakers. So, actually, I've read these readings earlier, so I'd like to respond to the title or what this piece was organized around, which was the writer's presence. And I just have some questions for Lata about that, in the sense of how do we talk about a writer's presence?
Writing presence.
Writing presence, correct. So, in this, I think it's really like, for me, the first spontaneous reaction after reading your work, reading these readings that you had mailed to me was uh, that, and I received it through the eye, not through the ear, as many of you had to do today. And what I feel is that your work has a tremendous sensorial quality. It's almost energetic. Like I feel the images that are recalled, the way the sentences are crafted. There's a kind of stillness. You sort of sink into the text as you're reading them, and I experienced it very energetically, you know. But I think when I think about writing presence, and particularly with these readings, it's a combination of the two things. One is what you're reading, and I think there's a play in how the person who's reading it, what's happening. There's a kind of alchemy, that's going on simultaneously, like reception of the text as well. So I wanted to ask you, really, how would you define this for us? How would you define writing presence for us? That was my sort of reaction, but how would you define it?
Well, what I've been experimenting with in my work since I became a serious practitioner of meditation is how to convey that quality and how to experience and live that quality outside of the meditation room. Right? What is it that experience opens that one can, and how might one carry that into the world? In how one carries one's literal self, but also how one perceives the world and how one communes with the world or how one meets and greets the world. And then as a writer and now as a somebody working with film, I'm interested to ask, what is it about the technology, the philosophy, that can be realized as craft? Okay? There is the technology of meditation, of being still, of learning how to witness, of paying attention, of falling into a kind of temporality that we do not usually allow ourselves to experience in the cut and thrust of our everyday lives, driven as they are by schedules and deadlines and things to be done. But in the space of whether it's yoga as a meditative practice or contemplation as a meditative practice, we allow ourselves to fall beneath a certain notion of temporality. And that is what opens up something in our consciousness. Is it possible to play with the craft of filmmaking, sound design, writing, whether fiction, not fiction, whether non-fiction or prose poetry or poetry, wherein you can convey that sense of focused spaciousness that enables the reader or the viewer to also experience it. That is the effort. And this is not the ideal condition in which to listen to this kind of thing. I don't know how it was experienced by others under these circumstances.
Okay, so I think there's only 5 minutes left,
5
I've been
minutes.
told. So let's throw it open, and anybody who has responses, questions, yeah.
Hello. I'm sorry because of the music around us. Because of the loud music, it was difficult to follow. Your words, of course, seem to sing themselves. I do Buddhist meditation. I would like to know what is the difference between writer's presence and writing presence. Doesn't the writer come through the writing?
That's an excellent. That's really an excellent question. I think the writer's presence is in the writing. The quality of presence that the writer brings to his or her craft is embedded in the writing and conveys itself in the writing. I titled it Writing Presence because I was very interested in I have been very interested in the last 15 years, I would say, in the question of how do you convey idea as experience? We are living very much in a very instrumentalized universe. You have information, having information is having knowledge, and we know knowledge is not information. How is it possible for us to open to other ways of knowing? How can we bring process back into into knowing so that it's not knowledge as capture? So that is why writing presence, so that it could invoke something in the reader or the viewer.
Well, it's not so quick, but my experience while you were speaking and the music was happening was somewhere really experiencing the relationship of what you were writing with with the task of having to listen in this environment and in this presence. And in your poem, when you spoke about the red and the rage and dancing up, I just really thought, with a woman's voice, with this very attentive journey, what is the role of rage in a present moment when there's just so much attack? And I really felt this was the street and that was the road. And, so what was so how do you, so.
Well, that's a very important. Maybe I'll take the second question as well. Yeah, sorry. Okay, that's all right. I think that's an excellent question, especially in a time when it seems as though rage is all the rage, right? It's often, but here I would like to make a distinction between the kind of passion that we see exhibited on our streets, on our television screens, and in what has become an ordinary part of our public conversation, which is the mind inflamed. That is really what we are being afflicted by, is the mind inflamed. However, rage is a perfectly natural response to something that might happen that feels unjust. What we have done is that we've assumed that if there is rage, there is injustice. If there is injustice and there is hurt, there is every right to act upon that rage. Because to act upon that rage is to act against that injustice, right? What I would like to point out is that once you see rage as you might see love or as you might see stillness, you can see it as a kind of energy which can arise, which can contain a kind of wisdom, but which can equally be witnessed just as you might witness grief. So I would say that if you open to rage as a bodily experience, as an experience of the heart and as an experience of the mind, and you triangulate the three, then it is entirely possible to witness this rage. And once you welcome it, it can then hum and skip and dance and turn into ecstasy, which is why in a spiritual journey, all the opposites become a third term. That's a short answer.
Thank you so much. Thank you.